Hello and welcome to Super Awesome Runner. My name is Sam. I'm the host of the show on the Super Awesome Mix Podcast Network. If you haven't already taken a moment to leave a 5-star review, I would greatly appreciate if you did that. It always makes my day, and it would especially make my day because my birthday is coming up and I'm actually turning 40 years old, which feels very weird to say out loud, but here we are. And a little bit of housekeeping related to that. Next week, I will not be publishing a new episode, but I will be running the 40th birthday mixtape episode that I ran with my co host and co founder, Matt, on the Super Awesome Mix podcast. So be sure to tune that in if you are interested in my music picks for turning 40 and all the reflection that I've been doing as I enter into a new decade of my life. A couple of things that are really fun about turning 40 is that I'm now going to be in a new age group whenever I run, which is always exciting. The good news about that is I will be the sprightly 40-year-old in the 40 to 44 category. So I feel like I'm no longer competing against the 35-year-olds that I'm competing against now. So there's that. However, as I have slowly started to figure out, and as other older runners have warned me, everyone just seemingly continues to get faster as they get older. And I think it's because they have developed the discipline to keep on training and keep on persisting, which is my segue today to talk about our topic of the week, which is motivation versus discipline. I see this a lot on threads where someone will say, "Oh, I'm not feeling motivated today. How do I get motivated?" And they're seeking kind of this external motivation from the threads community to get them up and out the door. That can be helpful, there's no doubt. There's a lot of research that shows having accountability will get you motivated and get you out the door and moving and exercising and doing whatever it is that you have committed yourself to doing. But it's not always going to work. And it also has kind of diminishing returns because your brain pretty quickly figures out that it can just kind of ignore other people and that there aren't necessarily a lot of repercussions for not doing the thing that you said you were going to do. This is true even for commitments we set to ourselves, falling asleep at night versus when we wake up in the morning or want to wake up in the morning. If you're like me, the night version of me goes to bed with such high hopes about how my morning is going to go. And the morning version of me is just like a completely different human being, right? If you're watching Severance, it honestly feels like two different versions of me. Night me is really motivated, so excited, gonna wake up at 5, gonna do laundry, gonna head out the door, take my dog for a walk, and then immediately turn around and go for a run and, clean and do this and organize and blah, blah, blah. Then I go to sleep, and morning version of me sees that it's 5 o'clock in the morning, or oftentimes, we'll wake up at like 3:30 in the morning, because I need to use the bathroom. And right before I go back to sleep, I'm like, there's no way I'm getting up at 5. And I just change my alarm back to 6 or 7 a.m. And there's that. So there's really no repercussion though, right? No one is really getting mad at me because I set my alarm back. In this case, I didn't really have any strong commitments. My dog is would still be okay going out at 7 versus at 6. In fact, he would prefer it because I really don't think he likes early mornings. I sometimes have to bribe him to go out the door with me that early in the morning on the days that I have like an early commitment. But my point is that the motivation that comes from someone else or a past version of ourselves doesn't always show up in the exact moment that you need it. So anyway, so people on threads will post that they're looking for motivation and they want someone to reply and encourage them. And I'm always happy to do that. If I see something, I'll try to like push them along. But what I often see is that people will instead just say something like, "You don't need motivation, you need discipline." And then like that's the entire comment. I think that that's not a very helpful comment to leave to someone, and I also think that it's kind of misguided because I understand what they're saying. Discipline is a driving force similar to kind of motivation. I think it's a longer lasting driving force, but these aren't just like switches that you can flip in your brain. You can't wake up one morning and be like, "I'm not motivated. Well, let me check in with my discipline. Oh, I am disciplined," and then go and do the work, right? Like that's not a conversation you're having with yourself. Instead, it's much more likely that you're saying, "I'm not motivated. I really don't feel like doing anything. Therefore, I'm just not going to do anything because I'm feeling crummy." And there's that. And, your brain will list out all the reasons why. It's not going to very easily suddenly say, "Oh, but I am disciplined. And so let me go do this thing." Discipline, like pretty much anything else in our body is learned over time. It is kind of a muscle in a way. It's a mental muscle, I would say, to get us to do the things we need to do or want to do even when we don't feel like doing them. It is an exercise in doing things you don't want to do. And that's really what you're training whenever you are training your discipline. It is setting a contract with yourself. And even though your brain will come up with a million reasons why you don't want to do this thing, or why you'd be better off sleeping, or why you want that bowl of ice cream versus a bowl of fruit, you are ignoring all of that and you're saying, nope, I made a commitment to myself. I signed a contract with myself, and I'm going to do the thing that in this moment is not going to actually bring me joy, but in the long term, it will bring me joy and I will be happier for it, right? Because the payoff comes later. It's all about that delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is insanely hard to program yourself to enjoy. They've done this a million times with kids. I may have even talked about this in the first season of this show, but they'll do an experiment where they leave a kid in a room with like a marshmallow or some kind of a sugary treat right in front of them. And then they'll say, don't eat that marshmallow. And we'll be back in like 10 minutes. We need to go do something. The researcher leaves. And what they've shown is that the kids that, actually last the whole 10 minutes end up performing better in certain tasks. I forget exactly what. It's been a while since I've looked at this research, but in general, they kind of score higher in certain aptitudes versus the kids that kind of bail and, ignore the researchers' advice or warning not to eat it before the 10 minutes are up and they eat it, in a minute or two in. They tend to kind of like fare worse. Um, there's nothing wrong with either route. I think there are times in our life when we're very okay not eating something for 10 minutes, right? And like ignoring the instant feedback that we want from something and looking instead at the long haul. There's other moments where we throw that out the window. I myself am now on a 22 or 23-day kind of fast from desserts, which is a really big deal for me because I am that kid that like finishes dinner and immediately wants like ice cream. And so I haven't done that now for over 3 weeks. And it is really difficult. And in fact, the longer I get into it, I'm finding that the harder it is because my brain continuously tries to, come up with a reason why I should reward myself. Oh, you've done so well. You should reward yourself. But that's not what I'm after. What I am after is making it a minimum of 30 days, ideally even longer, without having that dessert and without having that kind of knee break or knee jerk reaction to finishing a meal and then immediately jumping to dessert. I'm trying to code a new habit and it is very difficult to do. And so, what I have to do instead is bring myself into this present moment and really think about, we talk a lot about how our brains are very good at projecting the future because whenever we kind of close our eyes and create a mental image in our head, our brains interpreting that mental image honestly don't know that it's not real. You have experienced this probably every single night in your life whenever you have a dream and you wake up and you're like, wow, that dream felt really real. Why? Because all of our inputs in our brain actually cannot tell the difference between inputs from your eyes versus inputs from your like mental imagery that you create. So, whenever you close your eyes and generate kind of an internal movie screen, that starts to feel very real to you because as far as your brain concerned, it is real. So what I end up doing in these moments whenever I'm, not motivated and instead I need to rely on my discipline, it's again not just something I flip on, but I will pause, I'll close my eyes, I will literally visualize myself eating this dessert, and then most importantly, visualize how am I going to feel having finished that dessert. And 100 out of 100 times that I've done this, I realized that I would enjoy eating the dessert. I would finish it, and then I would feel so guilty, and I would feel really sad about resetting my sugar counter back to 0 and starting it all over again. I do, in fact, have an accountability buddy when it comes to dessert, and I would have to text her and be like, "Well, I caved, I ate some dessert, I'm back to 0." And that would also make me feel crummy to do because she's been very encouraging of me, and it's been nice to get that feedback of like, keep going, you're doing great." And if you follow me on Threads at Super Awesome Runner, you know that I've also been kind of updating everyone about how I'm going. So I've created all of these different kind of nets for myself to make sure that I don't cave and take the instant gratification route versus the delayed route. I play all of that in my mind in this moment when I'm really trying to, avoid having a bowl of ice cream. And like I said, it works because all of that pain that I would then have to suffer through is not worth the 2 minutes it would take me to devour a bowl of ice cream, because that's really how fast it is. And I think, well, that's just not worth it. I would rather take the joy of continuing my streak of no dessert versus the pain of bailing on myself, yet again and restarting the counter back to 0. That is a method of discipline where you are, again, sticking to the contract that you made with yourself a while ago and remembering the broader goal of what it is you're trying to do and getting yourself to that delayed gratification point. Because ideally, for me, what I'm really working for is number one, not automatically going to dessert after a meal. And number two, just feeling better, honestly. And I have been. I've been feeling so much better being 3 weeks into not having as much added sugar and dessert items. I don't crash in the afternoons. I just feel like lighter and healthier. I'm not as bloated. My running has been improving. My fitness has been improving. Like I'm starting to kind of see the payoff. And now, again, this is just adding value to my decision of not having the ice cream after every meal. If closing your eyes and kind of visualizing doesn't necessarily help, what you can do is really ask yourself, why do you crave the thing that you're craving? Why do you crave getting back into bed? Why do you crave eating the bowl of ice cream? Why are you craving the shortcut versus the long term? Why are you craving skipping your workout today? And if you can't do it in your head, I really recommend writing and journaling. If you can't journal, then go back to doing it in your head, but do it with complete sentences. So this is something I heard a little while ago and I'm obsessed with it, but think in complete sentences, because what you're effectively doing then is very similar to what you're doing when you're writing, which is you're taking all of these like nebulous, busy, crowded room of thoughts that often just play as like fragmented sentences, and you are organizing them into communicable thoughts. If you try to have a conversation with me with my brain space, you would probably try to have me committed, and you also likely wouldn't understand anything that I'm saying because, similar to most people, our brain is just bouncing around and creating all these like quick little rapid fire thoughts that are barely complete sentences, right? So if you can't journal or write, think in complete sentences and talk to yourself about what it is you're feeling. Why do you feel these things? And, how will you feel if you give in to them, if you skip the workout or you have the dessert, whatever the case may be that you're trying to argue with. That again, I think is enough to slow you down, check back in with your goals and get you on your way and develop that muscle of discipline. Over time, the more you do this, as now I'm 3 weeks in, the faster that feedback loop is. Whenever I first started doing this, it was many minutes at a time and often a conversation with my partner of just saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm really craving ice cream, but I know if I have it, I'm going to regret it." And having that conversation out loud, sometimes for 5 or 10 minutes before finally deciding, nope, I don't want it. I mentioned that it's getting harder the longer that I go, which is true in the sense that like my cravings are increasing, but the easier part is responding to those cravings because now it's a much faster loop back to just say, nope, actually, I don't want it. And I can have that entire internal dialogue that used to take me 10 minutes of convincing myself in 15 to 30 seconds. So it's not that I don't still want the ice cream after dinner right now, but it is that I'm much faster at telling myself, "Nope, I'm gonna feel really crummy if I do it, so I'm just not gonna do it." And that is that reinforcing contract that I've basically developed, with myself to keep me on my goal. If the thing that you're trying to do is, let's say, more complex than a 0 or 1 decision, let's say it's something like getting out the door for a run early in the morning. You go to bed, you're really motivated, you wake up in the morning and you're suddenly not motivated to do this, totally normal. You might wanna come up with a whole bunch of excuses why you don't wanna get out of your nice, warm, cozy bed, especially in the wintertime, but instead, you might be able to shrink the task considerably. The goal now isn't to go out for a run. The goal is to get yourself out of bed. So, one thing that I really like from Mel Robbins that I've been using very successfully is that 5-second rule. You count yourself down from 5 seconds: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And at 1 or before it, you, in this case, swing your legs out of bed and brush the covers off of you and stand up. That is all you need to do in that moment. You just need to count down from 5 to get out of bed and put your feet on the floor and get yourself away physically from your bed. Once you've done that, you will find that, your dopamine receptors might fire a little bit because now you've created this first little momentum build. Your brain is like, "Oh, well, I was able to do that and I'm doing okay." Now you're thinking, "Okay, I'm going to walk over to my dresser and I'm going to change into my workout clothes. That's all I got to do." You can do the 5-second countdown too of all I need to do is walk over to my clothes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm standing in front of my clothes. I'm here now. I might as well put them on. And you can just keep doing this to where you are shrinking the task all the way down to literally the only next thing that you need to do on to this journey of eventually making it to having your workout clothes on, having your shoes on, maybe you drank some water, used the bathroom, you did all the things you needed to do to head out the door, and now you're standing there at the door with your hand on the door handle, and you literally, are faced now with a much easier decision of, do I pull on this door handle and walk outside and just start walking and then eventually running, or do I reverse all of this, take my clothes back off, take my shoes off and climb back into bed, which now that feels like it's a regression, right? And your brain doesn't like to go backwards. So it will end up kind of feeling, well, I've got the momentum on my side. Let me just go ahead and commit to the run. So between those two things, I think when you are lacking motivation, that helps you or should help you a lot in kind of building that muscle of, here's how I overcome a lack of motivation and do the thing that I said that I want to do anyway. So, number 1 is having kind of that mental image, playing the movie in your head of what happens if you skip the workout, what happens if you eat the dessert, what happens if you grab a drink, what happens if you don't send that cold email to try to get a client, and see how you're going to feel if you do those things. Or you can journal, or you can have a conversation with your friend, or you can think in complete sentences, but you need to do something to where you are projecting out that future where you do make the shortcut decision and just check in with how you feel. Or route number 2 is shrink that task considerably. So let's say it is that you need to grow your entrepreneur business and you are afraid of sending this email outreach to a marketing list. Step 1, open up your email client, whatever you're using, your mailing list app, and just write the first sentence of this email, right? Or copy in, literally just say create new email, and then now you've got that in front of you, and then you're like, well, I'm here, let me start typing, let me start typing. Before you know it, you've sent this thing off and you're going to feel really good about having done that. Those 2 things can definitely help you whenever you are feeling a lack of motivation, because I wanna be very clear, motivation leaves all the time. Most of my workouts, I'm not motivated to go out and and run, and even when I am, even in the course of getting dressed and putting on my shoes and doing my warm up, there are enormous dips and valleys where I'm like, "Well, what am I doing? I really don't feel like doing this." But I check back in, I imagine how I'm gonna feel, and I also, realize that I've already done most of the work to get out the door. I might as well complete the journey, and I never regret it. I always come back and I'm like, "That was great. I'm so happy I did that." Motivation definitely comes and goes. Discipline can come and go, but at least it is a muscle that you work on, and over time, it just becomes that much more of a knee-jerk reaction. Like, your brain will always come up with reasons why it doesn't wanna do something. It is generally kind of a lazy organ because it's just trying to keep you alive and healthy, and the discipline muscle will override that and just be like, "Nope, I've already made this commitment, therefore I'm gonna stick with it." And I have found a success to my own happiness is truly when I make commitments to myself that I keep. When I make a commitment to myself and I follow through on that commitment, that is peak joy for me. It doesn't even matter what that commitment is. It can be very small, it can be very large. But by showing up for myself, I end up feeling the best version of myself. And that is only going to fuel more complex decisions down the line and help me achieve my goals. With that, I'm going to leave you not only for this week, but for 2 weeks because I'm going to be taking the week off since it is my birthday. And I've always said that if I owned my own company, I would just give everyone whose birthday it is that week the whole week off because I think we are overworked in general. So take a week for yourself, which is exactly what I'm going to do. But yeah, I hope you will enjoy the Super Awesome Mix podcast episode that I will be releasing in its stead of me talking about my 12 favorite songs going into my fifth decade, having completed 4, which is so crazy. So with that, I'm going to leave you. I hope you have a super awesome week. As always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in 2 Tuesdays.